Let's jump.
So today I'll be talking about the Walking Dead Telltale series. I don't really plan to review other games in the future. Maybe I will, but the reason why I'm talking about this is because Telltale games are basically movies themselves with moderate interaction. So I guess I'll first talk about the only season I disliked from this entire franchise. When I say Season 3 is the only season I dislike, I'm not suggesting that the other seasons don't have problems. I even have issues with stuff in the first season, but Season 3 just felt like a chore. The only reason I played it was because I wanted to go into Season 4 with more information, but, I mean, Season 3 is entirely pointless, or I should say 99% pointless, because you do find out what happens to Kenny, Jane. When you choose a Wellington ending, you find out what happens to Wellington. That's about it, and I think both are just complete shit. The way they handled these situations was insulting. I mean, the only way this season serves as a segue from Season 2 to Season 4 is showing the deaths of Jane and Kenny. And again, they were handled very poorly. I'm not one of those people that just straight up hates Jane. I think she's actually a decent character, but with that in mind, I think the way they handled her death just completely shat on anything I liked about her in Season 2. But then again, I have Jane die in Season 2, so it's not like I have to see her crap ending in Season 3. And the only reason for this season's existence could have easily been handled within Season 4 through a flashback. Instead of even creating a Season 3, you could have just integrated Kenny, Jane, and Wellington in the last season and put all that time and effort in there. Would have made things a lot smoother. Or, you know, just keep them alive. I think that would have been great because Season 3 is mostly filled with dull and lifeless characters. They have the personality of my voice. Javier isn't a bad protagonist. He's likable enough, but isn't really interesting. Conrad is alright, I guess. Everyone else was incredibly dull or obnoxious. Trip, I guess, was supposed to be the Kenny of the group, but lacks any of the charm or complexity within Kenny. Kate is straight up bitch. The fact that they try to match you up with her is ridiculous and hilarious. And then there's Gabe.
Dad, no!
Oh, hell yeah!
I just fucking don't like Gabe. Like I said before, Conrad is a decent character because of how unique he is. The character himself, he's alright, but I like how he's integrated in the story. The choices you make revolving around Conrad actually matter, and I wish we saw more of this in not just Season 3, but other games as well. You could easily slip up and get Conrad killed. I think that's a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, many people didn't get to experience this on their first playthrough because 99% of the people playing, including myself, chose to shoot Conrad in order to side with Clementine. The only edge that this game has over other The Walking Dead games, and most of the players didn't get to experience it. And here's the thing, I don't really blame the players for choosing to shoot Conrad, because why the fuck would I side with a random character I just met over a character that I played as for 2 seasons straight? But yeah, trying to keep Conrad alive is the only cool part of this season, and there's a slim chance you won't even get to experience it if you avoid spoilers. The villain of the season, I guess, is David, and you know, I feel like he's exactly like all the other Walking Dead villains minus the first season. He's a bit dull and doesn't really add anything new. So, wasn't really surprised there. It's always a survival of the fittest character. That's the villain of The Walking Dead, and it's kind of boring. Eleanor is easily one of my least favorite characters of all time, not only due to how two-faced and hypocritical she is, but also because the game gives you an option to side with her as if to say she might have a point. Yeah, no, Eleanor sucks big black peen. And then there's Ava. She's boring. But I will say her death was one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen in my life, just based on how it happened and the reactions afterwards.
Holy shit! Oh my god! Ava! Fuck! God damn it, no!
I'm sorry, man. I know she was important to you.
I would have died a long time ago without her. Thank you, Ava. Goodbye, my friend.
Like I said before, Season 3 is a complete waste of time, and it could have had some sort of a point, like maybe Javier shows up in Season 4 and helps Clementine and AJ, but no, he's never even mentioned after this shite season. Alright, so we're getting into the good stuff. I know Season 2 is right after Season 3, but despite how close it is in the ranking, I still think this is a really good season, and again, to me, Season 3 is the only bad one in the entire franchise. I like how Clementine evolved as a character, the inclusion of Kenny was a brilliant idea, and the supporting cast works just fine, for the most part. I guess I'll talk about the negatives first. As I said before, the villains in the Telltale The Walking Dead are pretty dull. Carver is just another survival of the fittest type of character, and nothing new is done with his personality. He's not a bad character, he's just kind of boring. I've seen this type of character dozens of times, and I like to make connections between him and the governor, because he's the same type of character, you know, survival of the fittest, but at the same time, he's a more complex and interesting character. I barely remember Carver, whatever the fuck his name is, but the governor is my favorite character from the entire TV show. Season 2 also suffers from the same issues as the other seasons, such as a lot of the major choices not really mattering at all, besides a few changes in dialogue, and some of the choices that do matter are not that hard to make. Again, like I said before, I don't loathe Jane. I don't think she's the best, but I don't think she's a horrible character until her death in Season 3, because that was just pathetic. But I'm definitely picking Kenny over her. I don't think this choice was, like, hard at all. I thought that it was a pretty simple choice to pick Kenny over Jane. There are people who definitely hate Kenny out there, but I don't know, I don't see people crazy for Jane. I do, however, see people building religions around Kenny. I don't know, it just was not a difficult choice. I'm picking Kenny. I don't care if he's an asshole sometimes. It's just, he's a much more likable character. We've seen him since the beginning. Jane, she was probably in, what, 2 to 3 episodes in Season 2? Yeah, easy fucking choice. The rest of the cast is kind of a mixed bag, unfortunately leaning towards the shitty side. Most of the characters are pretty meh, like Carlos, Alvin, Sarita, and Rebecca. I don't hate them, but I don't really like them. You have your characters like Luke, who are a great addition to the cast. I thought he had a great presence in the series overall. But then you have characters like Sarah, who make me want to shoot my nuts off. I don't know why Sarah even exists. All she does is cry, get scared, or fuck up. That's all she does in this series. She doesn't develop into a better character. She's just a fuck up. Why would I want to keep someone like that around? When I first saved her, I was like, you know, maybe she will become a better character if I choose to save her from the zombies, but no, she just dies in a stupid way again. There's no point in saving her. She's just a fucking idiot. I laughed every time she died. She's a burden to the group. Why would I want to keep her around? She doesn't add anything. Maybe except tumors. I like how this season didn't really make Clementine completely independent. She is still relying on others. I did think it was kind of stupid that the group of adults relied on a child to do all their work, which I kind of expected because you're controlling Clementine, an 11-year-old girl, in this season. I mean, I'm not going to play a game that just has me sit around, but for the most part, Clementine still acts like how she should, someone who's still adapting to the world around her. And then in season 3 and 4, you have her as someone who completely understands the world around her, because in those seasons, she's older and less dependent. So Clementine's good in this season. The other characters, Bonnie, Arvo, the black dude, I don't remember his name, I think it was Mike. Yeah, they're a bunch of chodes. The fact that Mike and Bonnie decided to side with Arvo after his group tried to kill them, yeah, that was pretty stupid. The worst thing about Season 2, though, is at the beginning of the game, Omid and Krista die right away. There should have been some sort of choice where you save either Omid or Krista and they're with you for the entire game, or at least for most of it. My biggest pet peeve with this series is that they kill off old characters and then introduce you to new characters we're supposed to care about, who are basically watered down versions of old characters. Then they fucking die and rinse and repeat. But all these mistakes could be forgiven simply due to the Wellington ending. I think the best ending for Season 2 is to side with Kenny and then go to Wellington and stay there. It makes the whole game complete, and I'm fucking pissed that Season 3 made it as if it was pointless. That aside, what I like about the Wellington ending is that throughout the entire season, there was an idea hinted that there was a safe haven like Wellington where it was invincible against the walkers. And as it turns out, it is true and creates a very beautiful ending. This is definitely one of the best scenes in the franchise as well. Season 2 was overall decent, had some screw-ups, some awful characters, but again, had a beautiful ending. Clementine's the main character, and Kenny's involved. Definitely more positives than negatives. Alright, so the reason why I have Season 4 over Season 2 is simply due to the fact that we finally have a group that is Clementine's age. For Seasons 1 through 3, Clementine has been with adults, and after Season 1 it got kind of redundant. And yeah, I kind of like this new cast. Sure, most of them are background characters you don't really give a shit about, but you get characters like Tennessee, Violet, Lewis, especially Lewis. Lewis became one of my favorites, up there with Kenny, Clementine, and Lee. Season 2 and Season 3 were missing characters that were up to that caliber. This season also has a love triangle, and I usually hate this writing trope, but they handle it pretty well. There's no stupid bickering if you choose the wrong person, it's just you pick one you want to be with, and that's it. Sure, Violet gets pissed you don't choose to save her, but it's not really about a romantic relationship. And sure, I picked Lewis because I like dark meat, but at the same time, both these characters were still pretty decent. So let's talk about the worst thing about this season, Lily. I don't have a problem bringing her back because she didn't die in season 1. It's actually a great idea to bring her back, but she's another survival of the fittest villain. How many times are you going to repeat this stupid ass writing trope? And big surprise, unlike the governor, they don't do anything new with it. She's basically a female Carver. Oh, we gotta do all this horrible shit in order to survive, but we still enjoy torturing children. Yeah, whatever. The other villain of this season is Minnie. And to be honest, I don't know how I feel about her because she feels less of a character, more like a plot device. I like the scene of her singing on the bridge. I thought that was kind of cool, but other than that, she's pretty dull. I didn't like AJ at the beginning of the season, but you kind of grow to like him. And you have to remember, the reason why he's so brutal and straightforward is because of the world he's growing up in. He doesn't know anything beyond that. And I think they handle this concept and idea very well. And Clementine is a great character in this season. She's made up of all the people that influence her the most. She kind of adapts all the best aspects of Kenny, Lee, Jane, and Luke, based on how they fight, act, whatever. And keeping her alive was probably the best choice this season made. Killing her off would have been one of the dumbest things and would have probably put this season on the same level as season 3, just solely based off of that, because it would have made season 1 entirely pointless. And speaking of season 1, it's pretty obvious why season 1 is the best season, not just from an emotional standpoint, but from a writing standpoint as well. Season 1 has the best characters, the best story, I think it has the best choices, and finally, doesn't have a villain who's just, I'm Mr. Survival of the Fittest. Out of all these seasons, Stranger is definitely the best antagonist. He felt like a real final villain, you know? He wasn't just there in the story for one season or whatever, he was there almost since the beginning, and you see him all the way till the end. He's the reflection of your choices, and is honestly the embodiment of all the YouTube commenters who judge YouTubers who do a playthrough of this game and make some choices they don't like. No matter what choices you make in this game, people are going to criticize you. The Stranger is hypocritical and also completely insane, but he's still way better than the villains from the other seasons. He's involved in the plot in a much deeper way besides just being an obstacle. This season does have an obstacle villain, but they're pretty entertaining and memorable. My favorite segment of the entire season is the cannibal farm. Even though I knew there was something wrong with this farm in the first place, I was still disturbed by the outcome. Now, the other characters, I don't have to say much. We all know why Lee is fantastic. We know why Clementine's fantastic. And we all know why we love Kenny. But other characters like Krista, Omid, Ben, Lily, Carly, Doug, I mean, they were super memorable and enjoyable. Even smaller characters like Katja and Larry were also pretty memorable. And I actually cared when these characters died. The other seasons afterwards, especially season 3, included character deaths where I either didn't give a shit or just started laughing. In season 2, besides Luke, the only character deaths that were actually impactful were characters from season 1. Season 3, I didn't care about any of the characters dying. At some points it was actually laughable and enjoyable. And depending on your choices in season 4, you can either have Lewis, Violet, or Tennessee dying. But again, you only get one of those type of deaths because not all 3 of them die. Season 1, there are a ton of character deaths, and many of these characters are actually memorable, likable, and enjoyable. I actually felt something when they died, you know, besides pure joy in season 3. Overall, I've really enjoyed this series though. It's a big part of my childhood and I've made a lot of connections with the characters. And I'm glad Telltale was able to give it a fitting conclusion.